When we take up and read God's Word, critics of the Bible sometimes like to point out that it's inconsistent because it tells these people over here to do this, and these people over here to do that, and these people over here to do that. And they seem to think that God wants everybody to do the same thing for all time. In fact, there's a lot of Christians that actually think that. If it's in the Bible once, then it's for everybody, and it doesn't ever change. And yet we're going to look today at some statements from Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount, in which he's going to make some changes to some statements, some of them being from the Ten Commandments, from the Law of Moses. I'm Pastor Tim Holscher, and we're talking about how to read the Bible, how to make sense of it as you're reading these things. And as we said yesterday, one of the things we need to do, but one of the reasons that we sometimes have problems or conflicts is we try to make statements in the Word of God, just as we were saying, for everybody. And we try to make everything the same for everybody. We don't want to see any changes. We want to think if it was good for them, it's good for me. What's good for me was good for them. And this is not actually paying attention. We create conflicts by making two things about two different situations to two different groups of people the same thing. And we run into conflict. Matthew chapter 5. This is the Sermon on the Mount. If you're not familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, I suspect most of you are. But this is Jesus. It tells us this in Matthew 4, that he was going about healing people and casting out demons, but he was preaching about the message of the kingdom, the good news of the kingdom, that it was coming. And this then is one example of what that message looked like. He didn't preach exactly the same 10 points at every message. He had a canned message, pulled the paper out and read it. No, but he always was giving the same gist of this message. Matthew chapter 5, verse 20. For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom from the heavens. You have heard that the ancients were told, or that it was said to the people of old, to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. Now, I appreciate the way they handle this. I have commentaries and I've listened to people saying that Jesus is correcting errors that they were being taught. He's not correcting any errors that are being taught. He is comparing this to what has been said in the Law of Moses, because what he's saying is the rules in my kingdom, they may mimic this, they may look like this, but they're going to be, well, for some of these things, even tougher. And whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. And whoever says to his brother, you good for nothing, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court. And whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty to go into the fiery hell or into Gehenna fire. Just think about that. You call him a fool. So Jesus is looking at a command. We go back over to Exodus chapter 20, verse 13. You shall not murder. This is what he's referring to in Matthew chapter 5, when he says, you have heard, you shall not murder. But he's telling them it's not just a matter of not actually carrying out the act of murder. He says, you will be held accountable even if you get angry, blow your top, or call your brother a fool. He was going to deal with those things. He's changing the rule a little bit. He's adding some strength to it. We go on to verse 27. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in her heart. And if your right eye makes you stumble, in other words, if you got to constantly be looking, as it were, from your right eye, tear it out and throw it from you. For it is far better to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell or into Gehenna fire. Again, he's going to say the same thing about the right hand. The point being is, this was very serious. And he's changing it, not just from avoiding the act of adultery, but even, shall we say, lusting, the thought of adultery, he's going to hold them for. And that's what we have when we go down to the second commandment following the one we just looked at. You shall not, No, right after that, verse 14, you shall not commit adultery. So there it is. There's what he's talking about. He's taken this command, he's taken this command. He says, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. And he adds weight to it. And he adds the fact that it's not just that act, but it's being angry with a person, or it's looking at a woman with the intent of thinking these things about her. Verse 31, it was said, whosoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce. And again, there are people that say, well, this is something that the leaders made up. But notice if you go to Deuteronomy 24, when a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her away out from his house, and she leaves his house. So in other words, he can write her a certificate of divorce, and that's what it says. But he says, but I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of sexual immorality, that word unchastity, over that would be what it's referring to, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So he's changing, he's increasing the standards, is what Jesus is getting at again. And again, you have heard, the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but you shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. And there's several passages of this, but if we go to Leviticus 19, it says, you shall not swear falsely by my name, so as to profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. And then elsewhere it also says, and if you make these vows, you need to fulfill those vows. But Jesus is now saying, but I say to you, don't make any oath at all. Just give up on making oaths. Quit taking these vows. Make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great God. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Just say yes or no. Jesus is changing the requirements. Matthew 5, verse 38, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And if we go over here to Leviticus 21, we read, but if there is any further injury, then you shall appoint as a penalty life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn. In other words, this is the way the law said that they were supposed to handle it. But Jesus says, but I say to you, do not resist an evil person. In other words, if they poke you in the eye, if they slap you, if they take a tooth out in the process, don't resist them. Whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other one to him also. If anyone wants to sue you, take your shirt, let him have your coat also. It's changing the nature of this. A lot of this has to do with understanding what the kingdom will be like. But again, Jesus is changing the standard in here. This was stated in the law. He's changing what was written. He's adding to it. Matthew 5, verse 43, it says, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor. Now, and hate your enemy is not stated in the law. We do have a statement about loving your neighbor in Leviticus 19. It says, you shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. This is what they were to do. But David, the great King David, wrote in Psalm 139:21, do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with the utmost hatred. They have become my enemies. So David was looking at this and he is saying, I hate them. I love my neighbor, but I hate those that are the enemies. But Jesus says, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. The point of all this today is just to remind us, God made commands for Israel. He gave them instructions. And God allows David's statement to stand in Psalm 139 because God allowed them to exercise hatred towards those enemies. But Jesus, as now he's looking to this kingdom that's coming, he says these commands back here, it's not that they were of themselves bad, but he says, I'm going to require even more than those commands. as I anticipate my kingdom. This is helping us understand, again, there are changes in the Word of God, and it doesn't make the old things wrong and the new things right. It just tells us the old things were one period of time and the new things are for a different period of time. This is important when we read the Word of God. Remember, you run into conflict when you make different statements for different people. You make them and you try to put them in the same situation and make them apply to both sides. It doesn't work. That's when we run into conflicts. And we can eliminate a lot of those conflicts by paying attention to who is being spoken to, what the charge is, what's being told to them, what's being told about them, and distinguish that from perhaps a different group of people, which we're going to continue to look at some of these. None of these today were directly about us. That's probably a shock because most people think everything that came out of the mouth of Jesus was for us. But as we saw in the last video, not everything he said was for us. When he's talking here, it tells us he was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. We saw that in Matthew 15 yesterday. So pay attention when you're reading. Who's speaking? Who are they speaking to? What are they speaking about? And is that then, when they're speaking, is it about you and I? Don't be quick and immediately go, yes, of course it is. Pay attention to the context. That's a key part of reading God's Word. Have a great day in the Lord. Read God's Word. Pick up a copy. Spend some time reading it, not just a snippet here or there, but thinking through a big section. Have a great day in the Lord then again, and thank you for joining me.